and that the measures being introduced by the administration are insensitive. Right, Honorable Speaker, the people of Ghana are looking up to us this afternoon that at a time that the entire world is coming out of an economic crisis, her leaders, her members of parliament will find common ground to agree on solutions to the economic challenges that the world is going through and Ghana is going through as well. And I want to call on our colleagues on the other side that this debate be characterized by that common national agenda ahead of us. Because if not, and we descend into the old realms of political goal scoring, then we will also be tempted to say to them that the time when the economy was in psychosis was in 2014 when they took us to the IMF. If we do not rally around a common national agenda to find solutions for our people, then we will also be telling them that insensitivity is when a president looks unemployed young people in the face and tells them that he's not a magician, he can't give them jobs. Mr. Speaker, we don't want to go that way today. We want to have a conversation with a national objective ahead of us. We are here today not to even consider estimates. We are here today not to even do appropriations. We are here to consider the economic policy proposal which the administration has put before us. Mr. Speaker, the question before us is whether or not this House will approve the economic policy. And my suggestion is that this House should approve the economic policy proposals that the administration has put here. Mr. Speaker, I say so for 5 reasons that I will outline shortly. Number one is the fact that the most important question on the minds of people of this country, including the young people of this country, is the question of unemployment. Right, Honorable Speaker, I have in my hands here the Afrobarometer study of the Center for Democratic Development, conducted just before the 2020 elections. And it lists the top 3 challenges on the minds of Ghanaians: unemployment, infrastructure, education. Mr. Speaker, the question therefore is, do the economic policy proposals that have been put before us answer the question of unemployment on the hearts and minds of Ghanaians? And I submit to you that the answer is yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, by the year 2024, 6.6 million young people will be out of school looking for jobs. Any administration that is minded to deal with the challenges of our time will be exploring ways by which it can help ensure that these people get jobs. And that is one of the first considerations that this budget answers. Mr. Speaker, as a matter of fact, the first thing we have done as an administration, indeed as a country, is to expand the Ghanaian economy. By 2016, when the immediate past administration was leaving power, growth had come to as low as 3.4%. What that means is that the rate at which the Ghanaian economy was expanding, so that private sector could expand and create more jobs, was down to 3.4%. Right, Honorable Speaker, until COVID hit us, we were growing at an average of 7% year on year. An average of 7% year on year. What that meant was that a lot of young people had the opportunity to get jobs in the private sector. Mr. Speaker, additionally, even in the public sector, the government of Ghana, under the leadership of the Akufo-Addo administration, ensured that at least about 300,000 young Ghanaians were recruited in the public sector, both for those who are paid by the Comptroller and Accountant General and for those from the non-subvented agencies. Mr. Speaker, this is very different from the days when we were told that because we were down to the bone and had gone to the IMF, we could not recruit people in the public sector. But what is even more exciting, Mr. Speaker, is that in this 2022 budget, the administration has made available 1 billion Ghana cedis to support young men and women in this republic who want to embark upon their own business, known as the Youth Start Initiative. And so, Mr. Speaker, the most important issue on the minds of Ghanaians is being answered by this administration. by expanding the private sector. And if you look at the forecast of growth in the year 2022, we as an administration are forecasting 5.8% growth. The International Monetary Fund, from where my friends get policy credibility, says that they project that we will hit 6.2% growth. That expansion is expansion that will create a lot more jobs in the private sector. The continued expansion in the public sector will create jobs in the public sector. And then the 1 billion Ghana cedis that we are making available to young Ghanaians will also help us create at least about 1 million jobs in the next 3 years in the private sector here in Ghana. And so the most important question, unemployment, is answered by this 2022 budget, Mr. Speaker. Right Honorable Speaker, every Friday when we come to this chamber, you field questions, majority of them coming from my colleagues on the other side. And a good number of those questions have to do with infrastructure and roads. The second reason for which I say we should support this policy is because this economic policy forecasts a huge expansion in the investment in infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, if you go to the appendices, in the year, and my colleagues are asking me where, I will draw their attention. In the year 2021, capital expenditure was 12 billion Ghana cedis. 12 billion. And even after forecasting and spending about 12 billion, every day we see demonstrations in all our constituencies asking for more roads. Every day we see calls on government to spend more for infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, the government has responded by making available in the 2022 budget 16 billion Ghana cedis for infrastructure. This is another reason for which all of us must support this economic policy. You cannot be a member of parliament who tells your constituents that I am going to Accra to fight for infrastructure for you. And when you come to parliament and the government says, I am moving from 12 billion to 16 billion on infrastructure, you say, no, I won't go for it. How can you go for it? And so, Mr. Speaker, the second reason for which we should support this is because this budget, unlike any budget in our history in this republic, forecasts the most amount of money to fund infrastructure in this country. And I believe that is why all of us, majority, minority, must support this economic policy which is before us today, Mr. Speaker. Right Honorable Speaker, the third reason for which we should support this economic policy is because it lays out a clear path for boosting local industry. Right from the days of O-level economics, one of the arguments has been to develop the economy, we must do import substitution. Mr. Speaker, we live in an economy where a good number of the things that are consumed are imported. In the last 3 to 4 years, we have made a lot of investment in supporting local industry. The administration has put before this House a policy that says that we will keep the benchmark values that have been discounted. We will keep it. However, for some 40 products which we produce here in Ghana, it will not be in our interest to continue discounting duties on them. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask my colleagues in this chamber some simple questions, and maybe we can help ourselves answer and use that to take a decision. Does it serve us well that we continue to discount the duties on poultry products? No. And that is why the policy is before this House that we should reverse the discounting of duties on poultry products. Mr. Speaker, should we continue to discount the duties on rice? No. That is why the policy is before us that we should reverse it. Mr. Speaker, palm oil. I come from a constituency where our women produce a lot of palm oil. Today, we are discounting the importation or the duty of palm oil. Mr. Speaker, does it serve us well? Does it serve our conscience well? No. That we continue to discount the duties of palm oil? No. That is why we have been asked to reverse this policy. Toilet paper. Chocolate, Mr. Speaker. Cocoa is the backbone of this economy. Chocolate is one of the things that we are pushing to have higher production. Should we continue to discount import duties on chocolate? No. Mr. Speaker, water. Bottled water. When people produce water in this country and we continue to discount the duties on water, does it serve our conscience well? No. Tomato paste and ketchup. Should we continue to discount the duties on tomato paste and ketchup? No. How about furniture? Mr. Speaker, our local carpenters are asking for an opportunity to supply some more. Does it serve us well that we sit in this chamber? Mr. Speaker, does it serve us well that we sit in this chamber and say we should continue to discount duties on furniture? No. That is why the executive has brought to this hallowed chamber a request that we reverse the discount of the duties on these about 40 products. My humble prayer is that if we really support local industry, now is the time to support this economic policy that is before us, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that we are grappling with is debt. The chairman of the Finance Committee gave us a trajectory of our debt management over the years. Mr. Speaker, I heard my colleague, the Honorable Atuforsen, seek to use the CD-denominated debt as a standard for analysis. I always say to him that the CD-denominated debt will mislead you, because if your debt is $100 million at an exchange rate of $1 is to 1 CD, like President Kufuor left us, the first day your CD-denominated debt is 100 million CDs. Mr. Speaker, if the exchange rate slips to 1.5, the next day it is 150 million CDs. Does it mean you've borrowed more? No! And so this CD-denominated debt analysis will mislead you. Mr. Speaker, the most important thing to examine are the debt sustainability indicators. And those debt sustainability indicators, Mr. Speaker, the most important one year to year that we must watch is the deficit. Right, Honorable Speaker, it was in this hallowed chamber that we all agreed that never again should an administration, without cause and without prior approval, go beyond 5% deficit. And in the first set of years of this administration, we demonstrated fulfillment to that. Yeah. Because of COVID, we went up to 11.7%. Mr. Speaker, if you read this budget, it is clear that we are bringing the fiscal deficit down to 7.9 in this 2022 year. We take it down to about 6 and bring it down to the fiscal responsibility limit of 5% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, that is the clearest evidence that this administration is committed to reducing the debt burden on this country. That is a policy that I believe this House must support. Yeah. We cannot in one breath say we want to see a reduction in our debt burden. Yet when we put before you a policy proposal that let us reduce the deficit from 11 to 7.9, you say no, I won't support it. How can that be? So, Mr. Speaker, we must all support this economic policy proposal that says that we want to reduce the deficit from 11 to 7, from 7 to 6, and 6 to 5 eventually during the lifetime of this administration. Mr. Speaker, my very final point is that this economic policy before us also proposes a common platform for mobilization of property rates. Mr. Speaker, if you did an audit of how many of us as members of parliament pay property rates and pay what we should really be paying, you may be surprised, Mr. Speaker. We know that property rates are not being collected in the right measure across our country. That is why this economic policy before us outlines a measure by which the central government will collect property rates and use the same property rate to develop our country. If we know that this is the problem and a solution has been put before us, I believe what we need to do, Mr. Speaker, is for all of us to support this economic policy before us so that we can mobilize property rates, not an increase in the rates, not a new tax, but those property rates for this purpose. Mr. Speaker, additionally, talking of revenue, this administration has proposed a more efficient and equitable way of raising revenue, that is the e-levy. Mr. Speaker, we say the system is working elsewhere. We want to see development in our country like elsewhere. But tax to GDP, Mr. Speaker, is only 12%. And we ourselves say that the informal sector is not paying much. We need to raise more revenue in an equitable manner, but protect the poor. That is why we have ensured that the first 100 Ghana cedis, which means 2,000 cedis a month, is not taxed. But subsequently, those who can afford are taxed. Mr. Speaker, as I round up, I want to call on every single one of the 275 members of this House. These are economic policy prescriptions that we must all support. We must support them because they are the answers to the questions on our mind. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
is Honorable Isaac Adungu.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the debate on the 2022 government economic policy and budget. Mr. Speaker, I want to assure my colleagues on the other side that we are very nationalistic and we seek to protect and develop our country. But we will not do so at the expense of the comfort and the well-being of our citizens. And that when you come here with budget proposals that seek to break the back of Ghanaians, we must stop you. When you arrive with an intention to impose a tax that will kill our people, we must kill the tax before it kills us. Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleague just said that they have achieved almost 12 billion Ghana cedis in capital expenditure. Mr. Speaker, this is not supported by the minister's own narrative in the budget. Mr. Speaker, I would like to refer you to page 47, paragraph 165. He says, Mr. Speaker, capital expenditure amounted to 9 billion Ghana cedis, 2.1% of GDP, compared to the revised target of 8.52 billion. Mr. Speaker, this is the minister, and this is the House of Records. They did not do 12 billion capital expenditure, but 9 billion. But, Mr. Speaker, the difficulty we have is that these people have suddenly found a different way of measuring our public debt. Mr. Speaker, Ghana's reporting currency is the cedi. It is not the dollar, it is not the pound sterling, and it is not the euro. It is the cedi. So next time when you go borrowing 3 billion from the Eurobond market and you come jubilating and spending it on fish and kenke, know that the exchange rate will translate it to cedi. And when the exchange rate, which is your own mismanagement, is reflected to show your true conduct of managing the currency, don't come here and cry and say we should use the dollar, because the dollar is not our currency. Mr. Speaker, there is a major challenge in our country. I'm yet to see a father in a house who eats all the food in the house, lick the plate, washes the plate and hangs it without thinking about how the children in the house will eat tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, that is the government we have today. Mr. Speaker, this government went and mortgaged 10 years of revenue that are meant for this country and for our future generations to borrow on ESLA. That money they borrowed, they know they will not pay for it. But they don't care whether in future our children suffer or not. And as we speak, we are using all the monies we are getting from ESLA just to pay for the interest service, and we've left the debt for the future generation to suffer, whether they can pay or not. Mr. Speaker, this same father also went and mortgaged future proceeds from debt fund, so that those proceeds are not available to future governments and future children, and does not care what happens to our future children. Mr. Speaker, they now say that the mineral royalties, we should allow them to mortgage that one too for another 10, 15 years, so that our children will die and suffer because this father doesn't care about the future. Mr. Speaker, a Japan in whatever form or shape will not be tolerated by us. Because we must think about future generations. You have taken ESLA. You have taken Get Fund. In fact, bauxite that is buried on the ground that you have not seen, but somebody told you there's something buried there, you have used it to go and collect money. Mr. Speaker, what kind of father is this? That you eat the entire food, lick the plate, wash it dry, and now you want to go for the last morsel that is left in the plate. We will allow that. Mr. Speaker, one of the difficulties I have, and I heard my colleague say that for every 100 Ghana cedis that we borrowed under John Dramani Mahama, we were spending 34 cedis to service the debt. That is 34% of your tax revenue. So John Mahama left you a room of about 66% to manage the economy. That is what we call fiscal space and fiscal buffers. And fiscal buffers are important in times of crisis. because they provide the opportunity and the capacity of the economy to